Welcome, everyone, to another deep dive. And, before we even get started today, I just want to offer a warm welcome to you, the listener. I pray that God blesses your day today and brings incredible peace, wisdom, and guidance to your entire week ahead. We're just so glad you're spending this time with us.
Oh, absolutely. It is truly wonderful to have you with us for this journey.
So imagine pouring a year and a half of your life into building this community from the ground up.
Right.
You invest your blood, sweat, and tears into these people.
Right. Huge investment.
Yeah. And then you leave to go start another project. And almost immediately, this group of slick, smooth-talking influencers swoops in.
Oh, yeah. The worst kind of scenario.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they don't just change the rules of the community. They actually launch a targeted smear campaign against you, literally turning your own friends against you.
I mean, it's the ultimate betrayal. And it is the exact situation the Apostle Paul found himself in regarding the church in Corinth.
It really is. So today we are peering into the sources we have, which is a stack of scholarly introductions to the most emotionally raw, fiercely defensive, and honestly revealing letter Paul ever wrote. That's 2 Corinthians.
Yeah, it's a fascinating text.
It's definitely not some dry, dusty theological treatise. It is packed with intense relational drama, biting sarcasm, and profound lessons on leadership that were forged in a deeply personal crisis. So, okay, let's unpack this, because to understand the sheer weight of this letter, we really have to look at the massive falling out that forced Paul to write it in the first place.
Yeah, the timeline is critical here. We're looking at roughly 51 to 56 AD. So Paul founded this church in Corinth, which was this major, wealthy, kind of rough and tumble commercial hub.
Like a really intense, bustling city.
Oh, very much so. It was a transient city, completely driven by commerce status and intense competition.
Right.
So after establishing the church there, he leaves for Ephesus. And eventually, he writes them the letter we now know as 1 Corinthians.
And from what I understand, that first letter basically goes over like a lead balloon.
Oh, it was a disaster. I mean, Paul gets word that the church is fracturing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just, internal squabbling over theology.
It was bigger than that.
Right. The primary catalyst was this group of outside agitators, the Judaizers.
Right.
These were individuals pressing the new Gentile converts to strictly follow Mosaic law if they wanted to be, true Christians.
Ah, so adding extra rules.
Exactly. But their tactics were deeply personal. They actively attacked Paul's credibility, his speaking ability, his authority. They were actively trying to sever his relationship with the Corinthians.
Wow. But Paul doesn't just sit in Ephesus and let this happen.
No, not at all.
He drops everything and makes this emergency trip straight across the Aegean Sea to Corinth. A trip that historians and theologians bluntly refer to as the painful visit.
Yeah, and we really have to recognize just how painful it was, because Paul steps off the boat and he's expecting to exert his apostolic authority, bring his church back into line.
Sure, lay down the law.
But instead, he walks into an open rebellion.
Oh, man.
Now, we don't have the exact transcript of the confrontation, but the historical context makes it pretty clear. Someone in that congregation stood up, publicly opposed him, and deeply humiliated him.
Right in front of everyone.
Yes, and the rest of the church. They just stood there in silence and let it happen.
Which is just wild to think about. I mean, you'd expect the great Apostle Paul to, call down fire from heaven, or at least deliver this blistering verbal smackdown.
You'd think so, yeah.
But he doesn't. He absorbs the public humiliation, turns around, and literally leaves. He decides it's better to retreat and extend mercy than to burn the relationship to the ground in the heat of the moment.
Which takes incredible restraint.
It really does. So he sails back to Ephesus,
Yeah.
but clearly he can't just let it go, because he immediately writes what is known as the severe letter.
Yeah, a letter he later describes as being written, quote, out of much affliction and anguish of heart and with many tears. Now, for you listening, we do need to clarify that this specific severe letter is lost to history. We don't possess it today.
That's a shame.
It is. But Paul poured all of his heartbreak and defensive anguish into it, and he handed it to his trusted associate, Titus, to deliver it back to Corinth.
Man, this is so intensely relatable. It is like the first century equivalent of having a massive blowout fight with your closest friend.
Oh, absolutely.
You leave the room in tears, you go home, and you write this massive, highly vulnerable, slightly angry text message.
Paragraph text.
Yes, the giant paragraph. You hit send, and then you just have to wait.
Agonizing wait.
Right, and you agonize for weeks, staring at your phone, wondering, did I go too far? Did I just permanently destroy this relationship?
That captures the psychological state perfectly, because Paul was an absolute nervous wreck during this waiting period.
I can imagine.
He left Ephesus and traveled north to the port city of Troas. And even though he had this seemingly perfect opportunity to preach and do ministry there, he was so consumed with panic over the Corinthians that he just couldn't function.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't focus. He eventually just abandoned his work in Troas and crossed the sea into Macedonia, desperately hoping to intercept Titus on the road.
Casing the dirt roads of the ancient Mediterranean.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is how thoroughly this shatters the popular kind of sanitized image we often have of Paul.
Oh, for sure.
We tend to view him as this stoic, untouchable theologian, just a guy sitting in a quiet room churning out abstract doctrines.
Like a machine.
Right. But this shows a man who was an intensely invested spiritual parent. His own emotional stability was inextricably tied to the love and health of this messy, rebellious community.
He is completely exposed, which I think makes the resolution of this standoff hit so much harder.
Oh, yeah.
Because finally, somewhere in Macedonia, Titus appears, and he brings the best possible news.
Best case scenario.
Yeah, the severe letter actually worked. The vast majority of the Corinthian church was heartbroken over how they had treated Paul.
They realized they messed up.
Big time. They repented, they actually disciplined the guy who publicly humiliated him, and they reaffirmed their fierce loyalty to Paul.
And you can just imagine the sheer, overwhelming wave of relief that washed over Paul in that moment.
It must have been massive.
This is around 55 or 56 AD, and that relief is the exact catalyst for the letter we are diving into today. He basically immediately sits down to write 2 Corinthians.
But, and this is where it gets crazy, that intense wave of relief actually kind of breaks the letter.
It does.
It creates what is famously known as one of the most disjointed, chaotic documents in the entire New Testament. Like, if you read it straight through, it gives you emotional whiplash.
Oh, completely. It abandons all the standard formatting. A typical Pauline letter is highly structured, Greetings, Thanksgiving, theological argument, practical application, closing.
Right. Very neat and tidy.
But 2 Corinthians is a roller coaster of sudden tangents, defensive outbursts, and just massive shifts in tone.
Right. Because chapters 1 through 9 are just overflowing with joy.
Yeah. He's so happy.
He's celebrating their restored relationship, talking about the comfort of God and praising their repentance. It's super warm and pastoral.
Very pastoral.
But then you hit chapter 10, and the tone abruptly falls off a cliff.
It really does.
It becomes incredibly harsh, dripping with sarcasm, and borders on threatening. He suddenly starts talking about coming to them with spiritual weapons to punish disobedience.
It's intense.
So wait, if I'm writing a single letter, I don't usually switch from giving someone a tearful, warm hug to threaten them with the very next paragraph. Did someone centuries ago just staple 2 completely different letters together by mistake?
Well, it's a very logical question, and you aren't the first to ask it. Because of that massive, jarring shift, many biblical interpreters over the centuries have actually proposed the exact theory you just mentioned. Yeah. They've suggested 2 Corinthians as a compilation of fragments. Some even argue that those harsh final chapters, 10 through 13, are actually a surviving fragment of that lost, tearful, severe letter we were just talking about.
Wow. That would perfectly explain why he's suddenly so angry again.
It would. But there is a major problem with that theory.
What's that?
There is absolutely zero manuscript evidence in the ancient history of the church that this document was ever divided. Yeah. The historic traditional view, and honestly the most plausible one, is that it has always been a single unified letter.
Okay, then how do you explain the sudden Jekyll and Hyde personality change in chapter 10?
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture of the conflict in Corinth, it actually makes perfect sense within one sitting. Paul is dealing with a fractured room. When he writes this, he is addressing 2 very different demographics within the same church.
Ah, I see. The repentant majority and the holdouts.
Precisely. In the first 9 chapters, he is speaking directly to the majority who repented when Titus arrived.
Yep.
He is pouring out his love and relief to them. But he knows the rebellion wasn't entirely eradicated. There is still a stubborn, vocal minority in Corinth who are clinging to those false apostles and absolutely refusing to submit to Paul's authority.
So he spends 9 chapters hugging the people who came back to him. Then he basically turns his head, stares directly at the minority who are still crossing their arms in the back of the room, and says, all right, now I'm talking to you.
That's exactly it. And chapters 10 through 13 are his final, intense warning to that unrepentant minority. He is laying it all on the line, offering them one last chance to change their minds before he makes a third visit to Corinth.
And he's not messing around this time.
No. A visit he promises will not be characterized by the gentleness of his last visit, but by the strict discipline of the Lord.
Now, to understand why this minority hated Paul so much in the first place, and why they were so easily seduced by the false apostles, we really have to look at the core conflict of this entire deep dive.
Yes.
It's a profound debate over one fundamental question. What makes a true leader?
Right, because the false apostles didn't just disagree with Paul's theology, they actually weaponized his actual life against him.
How so?
Well, they looked at his constant suffering and mocked him for it. And we really have to understand the Greco-Roman culture here to grasp why this was so effective.
Okay, set the scene for us.
In that society, honor, power, and eloquent speech were everything. They had these figures called sophists.
Sophists.
Yeah, essentially celebrity philosophers who demanded exorbitant speaking fees, dressed impeccably, and delivered flawless, dominant orations.
Wow.
The cultural assumption was that the gods favored the strong, the wealthy, and the impressive.
And then you have Paul,
Right.
who, works a manual labor job making tents to support himself. He gets beaten up in almost every city he visits. He's been thrown in prison.
Over and over.
Yeah, he's constantly chased out of towns. And by his own admission, he's an exactly a polished public speaker.
No, he really wasn't. And the false apostles used all of that as proof that Paul was a fraud. Their argument was incredibly persuasive to a culture obsessed with status. They basically said, look at this guy. He claims to be the primary representative of the resurrected, triumphant, glorious Christ. But he looks like a perpetual victim.
Right.
A true spiritual leader should be prosperous, eloquent, and dominant. How could the supreme power of the universe possibly be working through someone so pathetically weak?
And let's be honest, we do the exact same thing today.
Oh, without a doubt?
Look at how we evaluate leadership in our modern world. Whether it's, a corporate CEO, a high-profile politician, or a social media influencer building a lifestyle brand, we demand that our leaders project this aura of total invulnerability.
Absolutely. We want the highlights reel.
Right. We want the flawless image, the designer clothes, the unbroken track record of crushing success. If a leader today admits to battling crippling anxiety, or if their business ventures fail, or if they lack, physical charisma, we view that weakness as a fundamental disqualifier.
We write them off.
Yeah, we swipe past them. We equate visible success with legitimacy.
And the false apostles were playing that exact game. They paraded into Corinth, boasting of their own visionary experiences, their rhetorical brilliance, and their strength.
Just flexing on everyone.
Literally. They were the first century equivalent of the flawless Instagram influencers.
So how does Paul counter this? I mean, he can't exactly deny the charges. He is constantly suffering.
Right. He doesn't deny a single charge. Instead, he completely subverts their entire value system.
Oh, I love this part.
This is the profound theological heart of 2 Corinthians. Paul argues that his weakness and his suffering aren't disqualifiers at all. They are the exact mechanism through which God manifests divine power.
It's totally upside down from what they expect.
Exactly. He introduces this incredible imagery, calling himself and all believers jars of clay.
This is such a great metaphor. But he's not just calling himself fragiles, right?
No, it's about what the jar contains. In the ancient world, you didn't put your most valuable treasures in a cheap baked dirt pot. You put them in gold or silver.
Makes sense.
But Paul says God intentionally places the glorious light of the gospel into fragile, ordinary, easily broken clay jars.
It's like walking into a pitch-black room holding a cheap, battered cardboard box that has a 1,000,000-watt light bulb inside of it.
That's a great image.
The box isn't the point. In fact, the only reason you can see the blinding light is because the box is full of rips and holes. The damage to the vessel is what actually lets the light out.
That is a brilliant way to picture it, yeah. The ordinariness and the fragility are intentional so that when people see the power of the message, they know the immense power belongs entirely to God and not to the unimpressive human carrying it.
Right.
Now, this raises an important question, though, about what was actually at stake in Corinth. Because Paul isn't just defending his own ego here or his job title.
That is way deeper than that.
He realizes that this is a battle for the gospel itself. If the Corinthians reject Paul because they're disgusted by his suffering, they're ultimately rejecting the core message of Christianity.
Because you can't embrace a crucified Savior while simultaneously demanding a pain-free, glamorous leader.
Exactly. The cross of Christ was the ultimate shocking display of God bringing salvation to the world through an event of horrific suffering, public humiliation, and apparent, quote-unquote, weakness.
Yeah.
You cannot separate the message from the method. If you want a triumphant, flashy, perfectly polished religion that avoids pain, you have fundamentally misunderstood the cross.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because in those final chapters, when Paul goes on the offensive against his critics, he doesn't just defend his weakness, he actually weaponizes it.
He really does.
He delivers what scholars call the fool's speech. He essentially says, oh, you want a resume, you want to hear my leadership qualifications. And instead of listing his degrees or his successes, he lists his traumas in excruciating detail.
And the list is staggering. I mean, he boasts about receiving 39 lashes from the Jews 5 separate times.
Unbelievable.
Eaten with rods 3 times, stoned once, shipwrecked 3 times.
Adrift at sea for a night and a day.
Yes, in constant danger from rivers, bandits, his own people, and Gentiles. Sleepless nights, hunger, thirst, cold, and exposure.
Just a laundry list of suffering.
And on top of all that physical trauma, he talks about the crushing daily anxiety for all the churches he planted. He literally wears his scars as his apostolic credentials.
It completely dismantles their worldview by proving that their obsession with worldly power, dominance, and, smooth talk is entirely contrary to the nature of a suffering Christ. He goes straight for the jugular.
He doesn't hold back.
No. He explicitly labels these false apostles as ministers of Satan, disguising themselves as servants of righteousness.
It is a stunning reversal. The very things they claimed disqualified him were the undeniable proof of his authenticity.
But the fascinating thing about Paul's leadership is that he wasn't just a guy who wrote brilliant theological defenses while sitting in the clouds. He was also a deeply practical, boots-on-the-ground organizer.
Very much so.
Because right in the middle of this letter, sandwiched between the joy of reconciliation and the harsh defense of his authority, we find him managing a massive administrative project.
Oh, right. Chapters 8 and 9. It feels like a shift in topic when you read it, but it is actually the practical application of everything he's just argued.
Okay, tell us about that.
Paul focuses on a massive, ongoing fundraising effort. Specifically, the collection for the impoverished Christian saints living in Jerusalem.
Right, because the Church of Jerusalem was being decimated by famine and local persecution at the time.
Exactly. And Paul had made it his personal mission to travel around to all the newer Gentile churches he had planted in places like Macedonia and Achaia, where Corinth was, and collect funds to bring back to the Jewish believers in Jerusalem.
And he uses this letter to kind of hold the Corinthians' feet to the fire, right?
He does. He reminds them that they started taking up this collection a year ago with a ton of enthusiasm, but, well, they dropped the ball during all this relational drama.
So they got distracted by the infighting.
Precisely. He tells them to finish what they started and to give generously and joyfully.
So what does this all mean for us today? Why dedicate 2 whole chapters of such an emotionally charged letter to a pledge drive?
Because it proves that true ministry isn't just about winning theological arguments or having deep emotional connections. 2 Corinthians actually provides the New Testament's most extensive teaching on Christian stewardship.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah. Paul is demonstrating that the theology of weakness and grace must manifest in tangible, financial, physical care for others.
And it was crossing massive cultural landmines to do it, too.
Huge cultural lines. Think about the historical tension there. You have Greek-speaking Gentile believers in Corinth people who were historically viewed as unclean outsiders by strict Jewish populations.
Right.
And Paul is organizing these Gentiles to sacrificially give their own wealth to support Jewish believers hundreds of miles away.
That's amazing.
It wasn't just charity. It was a tangible, undeniable proof that the gospel could overcome deep-seated ethnic and cultural divisions. It was the physical embodiment of the ministry of reconciliation he talks about earlier in the letter.
God reconciled us, so we reconcile with each other, putting our money where our mouth is.
Exactly.
It is incredible to see the full picture. You have this messy personal drama, the fierce defense of his authority, the profound theology of finding strength in weakness, and the practical demands of extreme generosity.
It's all connected.
It is. 2 Corinthians really is a masterclass in what vulnerable leadership actually looks like in the real world.
It teaches us that enduring authority doesn't require a flawless facade.
No.
In fact, it demands a willingness to embrace our own limitations, to be honest about our traumas, and to realize that deep, authentic relationships require us to speak incredibly hard truths, but always wrapped in sacrificial grace.
You simply cannot have the relationship without the vulnerability. It's impossible.
So,
As we bring this deep dive to a close today, we want to leave you with something to really mull over.
yeah, we've spent this time exploring how Paul's most profound, most lasting impact was forged not in his moments of triumph, but in his moments of absolute distress and apparent failure.
Right.
So, the provocative thought I want to leave you with is this. We spend so much energy trying to hide our flaws, cover up our anxieties, and compensate for our weaknesses.
We all do it.
But what if the very struggles, the exact limitations, and the specific vulnerabilities you are currently experiencing aren't actually holding you back? What if those specific cracks in your armor are the exact qualifications you need to fulfill your greatest purpose and to offer the truest comfort to someone else?
That is a really powerful thought to carry with you this week. The cracks in the clay really are the most important part of the jar. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this journey into the messy, beautiful reality of 2 Corinthians. We hope it brought you some real insight today. And as we close, God blesses all the listeners. Until next time.